So Lando was on the outside and he was ahead, but then Max kind of came back on him and was ahead at the apex. So Max's corner, but Max also went off, which is why I think it should have been like no penalty or anything. Is kind of my thought on it. Because I think Max can say that Lando overtook him on the track if Max also didn't go off at that corner. That's my thought. But if Max didn't make the corner either, then I don't think it should be a penalty. Oh, but then it shouldn't really matter that Max didn't make the corner if Lando kept the position going around him. Yeah. I don't know. That's such a tricky one. Okay, so I'm looking at the steward's documents, and for the one where Gasly got the penalty, it says car 10 was overtaking car 23 on the outside, was level with car 23 at the apex, but fell back briefly prior to the exit of the turn. So that's basically kind of what happened between Max and Lando. Therefore, under driving standards guidelines, car 10 had lost the right to the corner. Accordingly, as car 10 left the track and returned in front of car 23, it is deemed to be a case of leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage. I would love to go back and see from this one though, did Albon stay on the track? Because I feel like there might need to be different rules if you, as the car on the inside, don't stay on the track. Because I think that's where a lot of people have contention with Max, is that he was never intending to make the corner because he also went off the track. So at what point is it Lando or Max's fault, that corner? I think that Lando should have gotten the 5-second penalty if Max had made the corner. It is so difficult to make a pass around the outside in F1 because of this scenario where the driver on the inside is always just going to force the driver on the outside wide so that they can't claim the pass, because then they're passing off track. But I think the way that you can solve this is say, okay, the driver, like in this scenario, it was Max and Lando going towards the corner, and Lando was a little bit ahead before the corner happened, but then Max kind of came back at him a little bit and braked later. So it was then Max's corner because Max was ahead going into the apex. But I think that in order for you to be able to keep the corner, I think you should have to make the corner. So you should have to keep all 4 of your wheels, or not all 4, but like you have to stay within track limits, making the corner, to be able to say that the driver on the outside passed you off track. Because otherwise, this is just going to happen every single time someone tries to pass on the outside. And this is something that we've seen Max do before in the past, where if the driver on the inside if the driver on the outside also misses the corner, then I think it should be considered pushing them wide because you did not make the corner yourself. And so in that case, you've kind of lost the right to the corner. And Lando should have been allowed to keep that position only because Max himself didn't make the corner, because you always have the advantage when you're on the inside of the corner that you can push the other driver off the road. But we've also kind of seen in the past where, like, I think back to Austria, I think it was the lap before, maybe a couple laps before the incident between Max and Lando. Lando had dive bombed Max back going into that corner. And Lando made the corner because he stayed on track, and Max was forced off and then kept his position. But in that case, it was almost identical to this situation where why didn't Max get the penalty from that situation? Because Lando would manage to stay on the track. But it was kind of lost in the whole kerfuffle of what happened on the next lap, where Max caused the collision. And so they didn't really consider this situation. So I wonder if they just kind of missed it, or it maybe wasn't a thing. But I think that should be how these corners are treated, that like whoever is ahead at the apex has the right to the corner. And so in this situation, since Max was ahead at the corner, he has the right to the corner. But if you don't make the corner as the person who has the right to the corner, then I think you should then have lost the corner and then it goes to the other person. Does that make sense? So like if you're coming on the outside and you're ahead at the apex, you have to make the corner as being the outside driver. And then the inside driver, I mean, in that case, usually when the driver on the outside has made the corner, then they're usually able to make the corner. But if the person on the inside is ahead at the apex, if they themselves don't make the corner, then I think they have lost the right to the corner. So I think that is what F1 needs to do moving forward. Because otherwise you're just going to get a situation like this every single time where the driver on the inside is just going to force the driver on the outside off because they have the right to the corner. And so if they themselves don't make the corner, then it's like, what can you do in that situation as the driver on the outside? Does that make sense? I think that would make it more fair, because otherwise, yeah, the driver on the inside is always going to have the advantage, especially if they are given the right to the corner. But you should lose the right to the corner if you don't make the corner. That is my TED Talk. Thank you for listening. I am going to go back to watching the rest of the post-race coverage.
A few moments later.
Okay, I've just listened to Will Buxton and James Hinchcliffe talk about it, and I think they've made a valid point where Lando isn't being aggressive enough in his overtakes, because I think this all comes down to the whole factor of, like I was saying, like who has the right to the corner. And since Max broke later, he took the right to the corner away from Lando, because Lando needs to brake super late so that he is ahead at the apex. So then if he goes around and then Max brakes late and forces him off, then he can claim, hey, Max broke too late and forced me off. Or Lando was actually able to make the corner himself, and then there's no issue around pushing them off. So the issue here is, it's that since Max took the right to the corner back by braking later, then the fact that Lando did overtake him off track got them into this problem. So if Lando had broken late to get that advantage in the corner, then he could claim Max forced me off. But Lando didn't do that. He's just being too cautious and not driving to the limit of the F1 rulebook in order to make that overtake, which I think is a valid take. I think I still have issue with the fact that Max didn't make the corner when Lando overtook him, but I think Max did have the right to the corner. So I guess I can see both sides of the argument here. It's so difficult. I still think though that I think I fall a little bit more with my original argument that, like, in order to maintain the right to the corner, you have to make the corner unless you are blatantly forced off by the person on the inside, by either not making the corner themselves or I don't know how that would, I guess it would just be forcing them off the track by pushing them wide. So that's the only case where the pushing them off the track should apply, is if he pushed me off the track should apply, is if the driver on the outside had the right to the corner. But if the driver on the inside has the right to the corner, then they should still need to make the corner to have the right to the corner, I think. And in most cases, they do. But this one case, he didn't. Okay, they've actually released the stewards one. So car 4 left the track at turn 12 and gained a lasting advantage. 5-second penalty. Car 4 was overtaking car 1 on the outside, but was not level with car 1 at the apex. That's what I said. Therefore, under the driving standards guidelines, car 4 had lost the right to the corners. This is exactly the wording that they had for the Gasly-Albon situation. Accordingly, as car 4 left the track and returned in front of car 1, it is deemed to be a case of leaving the track and gaining a lasting advantage. A 5-second penalty is imposed instead of the 10-second penalty because, having committed to the overtaking move on the outside, the driver of car 4 had little alternative other than to leave the track because of the proximity of car 1, which had also left the track. In view of the above, we determined this will not count as a track limit strike for car 4. Okay, that's interesting. So what they're saying is Lando didn't have the right to the corner and therefore was not allowed to overtake Max at the corner, regardless of what Max did. But since Lando had no alternative for getting around Max and was forced off the track, but not really in a sense, or he went off the track, it didn't count as a strike against his track limits, which is good. Like, I think that should be the case, that if you're battling and you go off track, like, you shouldn't be given a track limits penalty. So my question is, was that incident then marked as a going off the track for Max? Okay, I don't think they've posted all of the track deletions yet. Yeah, they haven't. So I guess we'll have to go through that later. But yeah, it's just like, it's such a complicated scenario because I think the only change in this situation from any other situation is that Max also left the track. So how should that impact Lando getting the penalty? The FIA have said it shouldn't impact that, but I personally think that it should, because otherwise Max is just going to keep doing the same thing. And this is kind of what happened in 2021, where Max would dive bomb on the inside, force Lewis wide, and then keep the position. So I don't know. It's a complicated one for sure. Max is always going to drive to within the rules. And so until they outlaw the driver on the inside, forcing the driver on the outside off, like he's just going to keep doing this because clearly this isn't something that's penalized by them. So like I don't blame Max at all in this. He's driving to the rule book. I just think the rule book needs to be changed. And this is also why, like, as much as it pains me to say it, I don't think Lando deserves the championship this year because I just don't think that he has exhibited the ability to really take a race. Like Lando, all 3 races he's won this year have been ones where he's been able to get the lead and zoom off. But anytime he's been in any kind of battle, he hasn't been able to get it done. Like he's either gotten track limit violations, collided with Max, or gotten a penalty for not crossing him correctly. Until Lando is able to fight in wheel to wheel with Max, like I just don't think that he has fully exhibited world champion mentality and world championship behavior. Lando just can't fight Max. He just doesn't. He doesn't have the stones in him to be able to do it. Like he's a little bit more of a cautious, consistent drivers, whereas like Charles has that dog in him, Piastri has that dog in him. He just doesn't have the aggression in him to be able to fight with Max. It only seems to be DRS overtakes that he's able to make work, or like a huge delta in terms of kart performance. I'm feeling very similar this season as I did in 2021, because in 2021, it was Lewis, the 7-time world champion, against Max, who didn't have a championship. And so I'm always going to be one to cheer for the underdog. And in that situation, Max was kind of the underdog because he didn't have the championship battle or titles at that point. And so I was kind of cheering for Max in that one. But then once Max started driving unhinged at the end of the year, I kind of lost I'd say I lost my respect for him as a driver a little bit because I thought he went way too far over the line. And so I was like so on the fence about who I was cheering for there because like I wanted Max to win to get his first because I always want someone to experience the joy of their first. But I didn't like the way that he was going about it. And so I was feeling very weird about it. But this year, Max is the 3-time world champion and Lando has not won one. So it's kind of the same thing where I'm kind of cheering for Lando because I want him to get his first. But I also feel like Lando hasn't shown enough that he deserves to win this championship because he's making too many mistakes. He's not battling Max the way that I think a world champion needs to battle him. So going back to like the Hamilton Verstappen battle in 2021, like at least Max and Lewis were able to battle and Max was able to get past him. I think he went over the line quite a few times and that was the issue with. But here it's almost like Lando has gone under the line too much and he's just not putting up as much of a fight that I think he needs to in order to be a world champion. So it's kind of a very similar situation, but also very different. And so I'm also so like on the fence about that battle as well, because I don't like cheering for the person who already has multiple titles, but I also don't like how the person putting in the fight for the championship is going about it. And so it's just like a really weird state to be in. Now, if Charles was in the championship battle, then that would be a different story, and I think I would be gung-ho. I think Charles is a little too far out of it now, which is unfortunate because he's been very, very good this year, and it's just been a few races, kind of the fault of Ferrari, kind of the fault of Charles, where he kind of lost out of it. But I think next year, hopefully if they can put a full year together, we can see what happens. But yeah, I'm not really cheering for Max or Lando. And so it's just kind of like a, oh. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about that.